All right, Sean asks, are we only using regular trading hours for our TPO charts? And the answer there is yes, for quote unquote normal markets that have the majority of their volume that is done, that trades within the pit session, the regular trading hours. If you are trading more of a market like some of the currencies or different things that volume is more spread out around a 24-hour period, you're probably better off using more of a 24-hour profile. Experiment though. I know you're here to, get advice from me and what I do and things like that. Um, Experiment. Don't ever be afraid to try something out. Put two different ones up side by side and watch it for a week. Scroll back and look at 180 days of data and see how it looks. And if I did that for the S&P, I can look at those profiles and I know that those distributions don't work as well, right? You can kind of just see that. Take a look at what distributions from what periodicity are most respected, whether that's overnight session, all that kind of stuff. Feel free to, let me share my screen. I'll show something here that I've done quite a bit throughout history of using TPO stuff. So for example, here with S&P, as you know, we can come in here and, well, first we need to change our session time. So let's just change it to using an evening session, right? We can toggle that on. We'll skip those 15 minutes and just start it at 6:15 and have it come up to before where we open. So we changed our session times to include the pit session and the evening session. And look at that. I already had the setting on, but I'll go and show you. It's used separate. All right, probably some of you will tell me in the chat how to do this. Where is it? Maybe it's just this new period at day session start when using, I think that's it. So let's turn this off and see if it goes away. Yeah, now it's just putting them all together, but they're colored. That's a new Sierra function. Used to, back in the day, I had to come here and set each one of these to be an alternating color back and forth, like the dark gray versus the blue. And so now finally it looks like they've got that right here. Let's just test it out for the overnight session. Yep. Nice. Sierra, always doing cool stuff. So that's the setting there. And you can make those all one color, just put those colors the same. But let's go back and use a new period when using evening session. So boom, look, you can keep your day session and evening session and prioritize one, but be aware of another. There's no magic bullets, but that'll certainly help you see how the market's trading. I remember, I think it was Nate in the room earlier. He posted this picture and he was saying, look at how we're kind of filling in this area from, the singles from the overnight. And sure enough, that's part of the dynamics of what was going on there. I think the composite structure up here had more of a factor, right? As we weight different things, but, yep. But in general, for normal standard US products, I'm using standard regular trading hours. David asks, from a mental framework perspective, how do you stay focused while dealing with an underperforming week? It's not tough to stay focused. In fact, I think for most people, you probably double down on your focus when you're not doing as well. Um, I think the more important things, rather than staying focused when having an underperforming week, is staying calm, staying true to your methodology, and not looking to change everything up just because you're having some struggles like I have this week. I can tell you that next week I'm going to be getting back to basics, really trying to do the basics well. I'll do a thorough weekly review. I'll probably do that Sunday when I'm back in town. Give it a little bit of space here, a couple of days off, and come back Sunday with a fresh perspective and really assess what I did this week. But yeah, just it's hard to get this without experience. But I've said it before, I'll say it again. Confidence in trading comes from knowing you can handle the worst. That's what, like, to me, to be sitting here after the crap week I've had. And I mean, don't get me wrong, I caught a few good trades in the afternoon here and there, but this was a losing week. I'm down money this week. And look, I think my ego's a little bit hurt. I wanted to show off for you guys. I wanted to make you feel good about the NADRO methodology. So, it bothers me, and that's, I think, been part of this week. I don't think I traded terribly, but there's certainly been some, more internal conflict and discomfort than I normally experience. So, I'm not afraid to admit those things. I think going to a stream even is an additional layer of pressure on a trader and stuff like that. But anyways, the thing, I've been through worse trading. I have come out of drawdowns. I've been in big drawdowns and I've come out. You know what I mean? Like, that's where confidence comes from, is knowing you can experience the underperformance. You're going to be okay. You don't have to freak out. So it's go through a couple tough cycles as you're figuring this out, as we all do. And you just get stronger and stronger in terms of being able to relax. And like we said, keep smiling, stay calm, and kind of keep calm and carry on. Sean says, your 3-minute charts look like there was a double VWAP, one for ETH and one for RTH. That's true. And so if you could look at the recording and see how I did that, but I went into analysis, studies, add custom studies, and then I added this one, which is ECI VWAP anchor. And then all you got to do is, wherever you want to put it, right click on the chart and it'll start it from there. Note how this captured the rotational behavior from the point of this great retest of the weekly developing value low, right? Beautiful place. So anchored VWAPs are something that's pretty cool, as you can see here as well. When I use them, I typically am saying, okay, show me what the RTH VWAP is as well as my normal ETH. Over times, I've had 2 different charts up, one ETH, one RTH. That's been the most common for me. Right now, I've chosen to kind of simplify and consolidate some things. And so I think this works. Now that I don't have CVA levels mapped over onto this chart, which I pretty much recommend that all of you do, it's not too noisy with the ETH and the RTH. But I really hate for my charts to get too noisy. But this one looks pretty clean to me. Gabriel, great question. Are trades from just the single day prior value area good enough to be taken? The answer is absolutely yes. if you have something else to give you that nudge in terms of, let's say, it's like today, for example, let's say that we had our weekly, or whatever, instead of being bullish from down here, was bearish from up here, right? Let's draw this out a little bit. Let's say that this is like a really strong imbalance down on like the quarterly. It doesn't matter, okay? And so obviously you're bearish. Obviously you'd love to get this short. You may not get that though. 2-day CVA. In fact, forget that it's a 2-day CVA. Okay, let's just focus on the question here. Single day. You can absolutely, let's say we opened here and then traded down. You can absolutely take that trade. It's a way to get involved with this main, whatever long-term VWAP this might be in this example. It's working, right? You've rejected it on the prior day. Great excess at the highs. You may not get another retest from that actual trade location. So to go with a breakout pullback of prior value, the answer, Gabriel, is absolutely it's good enough. I just prefer to combine it. Do I ever take trade? Like, for example, on a day where I don't have a good read on narrative, I might also do it, Treat it more of a scalp. It doesn't necessarily have to have a great narrative behind it. You can do it. It's kind of all we've got. It's the best we've got. And if your criteria for trading allows that, then go for it. If you have to have a really good narrative to do it, then you don't. Great question. It's always important to discuss those kind of things, because it's like we always talk about the different like really A+ scenarios and stuff. Well, what do you do when it's a little bit in between, right? All right, I got to speed up. We're not going to get to all these questions. Nick asks, can you speak a little more granularly about what you're looking for to jump in once you have NADRO all in line, or at least NADR, as opposed to waiting for a Heikin-Ashi turn? Case study from last night would be an example. So I'm looking for order flow / footprint, right? Even if you're not using Delta, you can still use footprint. So case study last night, right? Where we had 2 incomplete auctions. We traded down through, and then you start to see some buying. Maybe the Heikin-Ashi shift doesn't occur till up here, But if we're wicking through this area and that's that, and I know, like you saying, NADR already makes sense, I can get in quicker. But heck, look at the trading I did this week for you guys. I got in quick all over the place. It didn't help me. I still lost money. You know what I mean? Like, it's not. I understand that when a trade's gonna work, it's gonna work whether you got in early or late. When it's not gonna work, it's not gonna work whether you got in early or late. It's only those in between ones where maybe there's a little bit of variance and a little wiggly, and maybe that scares you out or something, which it shouldn't. You should use the real stops right now as you're coming up the curve. The trade-off, exactly, Nick. It's the risk reward. It's really dialing in the risk reward. But I can tell you, if you guys don't have the basics down and you don't have all the skills under your belt yet, and you try and go get super low time frame timing trades and try and do stuff more advanced than Heikin-Ashi turns, it's not going to end well for you. It's not. So allow that to be something that builds up over time. So that's the warning I'm going to give you, and I'll continue answering your question. Patterns, right? Similar. Remember the case study as well. It was actually a double bottom here, which was a spring pattern. So the spring pattern allowed me to get in pretty early. And then, micro trend line breaks, right? You're coming into a level. Where does it change? You start to say, okay. And then maybe there's no Heikin-Ashi yet, but maybe it starts to break. I'm typically going ahead and getting in as soon as I start to see that. Things like that. That's how I time my trades. Again, once we already have all of those components done, they're lined up for us. Rafi, the main product I trade has the bulk of the daily volume split fairly evenly across 3 or 4 different exchanges. In light of this, do you think order flow tools like cumulative delta footprints are going to be as useful due to them showing information from only one of the 3 or 4 main exchanges? I don't know, my man. I don't know. Obviously, it might be helpful. I would say study it, right? Study it historically, see if it looks like it gives decent signals, or if it looks like crude oil did yesterday, where it's just getting smashed and delta's at plus 10,000, and it's like, okay, it's not really like giving me good signals here that helps, right? To pull up the euro currency futures, right? Order flow historically there, things change, crude oil is changing. It doesn't work well with it, right? It doesn't look good. So order flow may and may not work. Tony giving a suggestion here of where's the biggest volume exchange and use that one. That might be a very great point there, Tony. You could get really advanced and you could compile data from all these exchanges and feed them into something. That could be pretty cool. So I don't know. Those are some ideas though. Nick with another question. Off topic, as a pro trader, how do you explain to non-traders what you do for a living when asked? Oh man, I think traders all love this topic a little bit because it's such a weird thing. People, I tend to read the room. It depends on the situation. A lot of times you tell people you're a trader and they think, I've had people think that I told them I was a traitor, a traitor. So like, they're like, you're a traitor? What do you mean you're a traitor? I mean, it's crazy. Other people, you meet those like people who are just like fascinated by it, right? They think, oh my goodness, like, wow, you're actually one of those people that do that. Let me pick your brain. That's always fun conversations, finding someone else who's essentially interested in markets. But other than that, when I say I'm a trader and my wife says she works in a nonprofit, where do you think the social conversation typically goes? It goes towards her, and I'm fine with that. But I typically just tell people, and then I kind of read the room from there, and usually it doesn't become a conversation. I think my favorite conversation is one of my friends. It was mainly one of my wife's coworkers that we've grown to be really good friends with. I told her, and she actually asked, like, what does that mean? What do you actually do? And so I told her, positive expectancy, put on risk, that kind of thing. And well, do you have a salary? No salary. Pretty much have never had a salary. She's like, that sounds terrible. So it's always fun. Yeah, Greg saying he's experimenting with 3 different profiles for gold. Sweet. Keep us posted in the room. That's what this community needs to be all about is I'm going to continue exploring, for example, like the way order flow could be evolving in crude oil. I'm going to keep you guys posted on what I think about that and adaptations I make, and we'll start threads in the community. That's what makes, what you guys paid to be in this course, being a part of this community is worth it alone. Much less the course that you actually got for signing up for the course. Stay involved with the community. Like that's massive. And I think you guys already get that. Alex, the live trading this week was mega educational for me, especially your quick decisions on when to pull a trigger, as well as the lack of emotions during losses or stop outs after the trade was initially profitable. What a great example of an evolved human trader. Bravo. Thank you, Alex. I appreciate that. One, from your experience teaching NADRO, what common mistakes do students keep on making after learning the methodology? For example, you mentioned in lesson 3, people often become too reliant on DVA for trade entries. What other things should we be aware of now that we're NADRO graduates? Great question. Trading from the middle of DVA is a big one. I've run tests before. There's positive expectancy fading extremes of DVA on like a standalone basis, guys. So, and I can guarantee you from experience that when you're in that middle third of DVA, not always, sometimes it lines up perfectly with a fresh shift in condition or whatever, and we can trade from it when that happens. But when it's not a fresh shift in condition and it's in the middle of DVA there, you don't really have much of an edge in terms of timing a trade there. You could always put on a trade with a huge wide stop and you could make that work. But the way we typically, teach people to time trades with pretty precise timing, it's low expectancy, if not negative, just because of the noise. So trading from the middle of DVA is a big deal, a problem that I see with students. Not journaling is a problem that I see with students. Not continuing to work on mental framework. And you know what? The biggest, and this is very disappointing, the biggest way I see that show up is students get good enough to pass the tryout, but the mental framework not good enough to be profitable on the live desk. It's very disappointing. It's frustrating for everybody. It's frustrating for me as someone who takes part in your success, both emotionally and financially. So keep working on your mental framework. Like, you have a lot bigger challenges to face that are going to come your way. And if you're not putting in the work on that, you may start putting up some numbers in sim, but guess what? That's essentially futile because you won't be able to translate it to live trading when all of a sudden you start to deal with that natural human trader self that you haven't been dealing with. So deal with it now. Deal with it. Not being selective enough. So people just, again, like you mentioned, Alex, like just saying, well, here's an imbalance pullback, so I'm going to take it intraday, Well, guess what? Did you really have any other reasons for that imbalance pullback to make sense? Remember, an imbalance pullback intraday is just a way to potentially access trades that you've already been able to see based on the narrative and the risk reward landscape that's evolving. Just because a market attempts to go in balance and there's a momentum shift as it pulls back in rhythm, it doesn't mean that's a trade opportunity. So be selective. Be narrative driven. You may very well become the best scalper in the world, and you may lean less on narrative than I do. That's your prerogative, right? That's something you might work into as part of developing your niche. But right now, if you're really interested in what you've learned from me and continue to build that, you must be focused on narrative. Narrative is everything. We can time rotations. Some of them are going to work, some of them are not. It's not rocket science. Now, it's kind of rocket science in an art form to get really, really, really good at that. But as you guys know, you can trade with a 4-bar pullback and a Heikin-Ashi turn as long as narrative makes sense and DVA is giving you some semblance of a trade. It's not rocket science. And second question from Alex, can you briefly tell us about a few traders who, after learning and perfecting NADRO, went on to be CPTs and now trade for a living? I've got, several stories of people who are trading really, really well on my desk. And I know the desk has been in a little bit limbo. We're just getting it officially fired back up. But they're trading really, really well. We've been bumping their size up. what else can you want, right? You're trading well, you're growing, you're doing things well, and you're bumping your size up. I have a few other traders. I can't talk exactly about them. A lot of them don't want to be public in some ways, but they are absolutely profitable and professional traders, and they're doing their own thing. Unfortunately, they're not trading for me. I wish they were. Some traders are doing things very, very well, having a big year swing trading with NADRO. And that's across multiple asset classes. That's not just like the S&P. So yeah, I mean, there's a bunch of different things. And I think maybe an even more important question would be like, what do I think that they did that allowed for that? And it's really that work outside of trading. Remember, we talked about that pinnacle of development. Every single one of them put in the work, which you guys now know what I mean by that, who is absolutely doing that consistently. I do not have one example for you of traders who really slack off on prep, journal, and review, who are, they may have poked their head above into CPT territory for a while, but they did not stay there. And just like anything else, guys, the percent of this, student group here, what percent of you guys do you think will end up being CPTs, even being handed a methodology with edge like this, right? And I know it's difficult. It's not just like buy the moving average crossover. We might hope for 2% of you. I think that would be a win. I think a large portion of you will be able to be essentially sim trader CPTs. I see that all the time. Advanced group mentoring. I don't quote me on this, but I would guess, I don't have the numbers in front of me, but I would guess that 75% of my advanced group mentoring students end up by the end of the third month with ridiculous equity curves and stats, some of them better than mine. But what really separates people is going live, is whatever that hurdle is for them. For some people, they can trade great until they hit the tryout and then they suck. For some people, they crush the tryout and then they hit the desk and they suck. It's mental framework. But a lot of people, especially those dedicated enough, and typically people who sign up for, it's very rare for someone to sign up for advanced group mentoring and they're not really committed to the craft. They're showing dedication by signing up for something like that. Exposing themselves, being vulnerable, sharing their results, all that kind of stuff. They're putting in the work and they're doing it. And I bet you 75% of those people have what I would call a consistently profitable track record on sim or better. But the real hurdle and the what holds people back is taking it to that next level where it starts to really matter. And it's mental framework. Zhao, hey Merritt, a question about process goals and how to track your improvements. What do you think about giving you points or scores for completing specific tasks? Today, my process goal will be to focus on rhythm. How would you give some points for that as you improve? Maybe plus 1 point for every R you take based on the specific goal. I would remove it from R. And if R, you mean like R value, like stuff, I would remove any form of outcome from scoring that. In fact, I just got off a call with someone who's kind of building out some tools for us. Who knows how far it might go. Some of you might know who I'm talking about, but we were talking about how can we take like Notion and what we're doing there and incorporate my advice and the way I do things and have my traders and students do things is getting objective, getting quantitative, like you're suggesting here, around maybe some soft skills. Maybe, maybe it's not even rhythm where you could quantify and say that was good, that was bad. But most of them are. But even just tracking that, or at the end of the week, taking a look at what was your score. I don't like attaching it to R that you're taking out. I would attach it most for whenever the decision comes up. So with rhythm, it's going to be all your entries, right? With trade management, it's going to be all your exits. More times than not, I think the way to do it is to give a pass or fail grade for that specific decision. And if you had 10 instances of that during the session, well, then you've got 10, instances of pass or fail. Give it a 1 or a 0, in a spreadsheet, or a pass or fail tag in Notion or whatever, which we could then maybe in the future attach to some data and whatnot. We can help people get better. So just get objective about almost like a pass fail score, and then look at that at the end of the week, at the end of the month, and say, what was my success rate on my process goals? Another question from Rafi. Secondly, regarding footprints, are the concepts of incomplete or complete auctions still useful in the footprint when it's aggregated, meaning the lowest row on the footprint isn't just the actual bottom tick, but multiple price levels? It's more useful. It's more than a single print would be, right? So for example, if you want to aggregate ticks on the NASDAQ, and I'm pretty sure you go to chart settings and it's just right here, right? You can change the tick size. So instead of looking at the S&P in 25-cent increments, which by the way, we know is one tick, you could set this to 1.00, which would be 4 ticks. So you do that on like a footprint chart of like the NASDAQ, which is really thin and whippy. And now you're like averaging out the data, right? You're grouping it in bigger chunks. So my answer is that it's more meaningful. It's at least as meaningful as if it, if you would have left it alone. But it's going to be more meaningful. On Notion, there's a gamification template to track your daily tasks. Pretty interesting. I'll look into that. Is that one of the templates that it comes with when you like just open it up? Well, I'll find it. I'll find it. Or maybe you guys could share it. We have kind of a Notion thread in the community. It's called we need to change the name of it. It's called like Better Than Evernote or something like that. I don't know. Edward, not a question, just a bit of feedback. This has been a great course, especially as a refresher for an old student like myself. There were several key magical insights I've picked up that transformed my trading in the last month. That is great to hear, Edward. 1, a reprioritization on structure. I'd gotten sucked into long-term VWAPs as the shiny object. And 2, the mental framework exercise in week 1. I've made significant process and outcome improvements. So thank you. Thank you, man. A big, as I said before on one of these calls, big thank you to you. And I know you probably got more out of it than other people did, but still a big thank you to you, Edward, for just like, you were like a moderator of that thing. You know what I mean? Like you were very, very helpful to people when they had questions and whatnot. And quite frankly, it helped me out a lot just because I think a lot of people know I have a ton on my plate. I'm like, I'm setting up contractual stuff with live traders and the prop desk and all this stuff. And I'm trying to run a live course and I'm doing all these reports and recaps and pre-market preps and everything for everyone and answering questions where I can and doing mentoring. So very, very big help from me personally, Edward. So awesome, man. Great to see the improvements. Expect you on the desk in, let's say 2021. How do you take a trade like at noon today in ES when price is really pushing in your face? That's a good question. I thought someone might ask about that. So price, as it came into one of those scenarios that I'd laid out around, this would be kind of, we'll show you on the prep chart as well, right? Right here. when we signed off, for those of you who weren't on Futures Friday, remember, or even those of you who weren't on the morning stream because you get tired of seeing me lose money, that's fine as well. For those of you who were, what I had said as we signed off the stream was, look, nothing to do for now. Either we will, and I need to kind of see this chart to know. So I had tried long here and here, which I'm thinking is here, right here. Okay. So a couple long attempts here, scratch it out about right there. And then, you know, it's selling off. We're getting into the middle. We're rotational within DVA. What's my narrative read? The narrative read is bullish against 3320s here, right? Because this is a failed bear line in the sand. And now it's, I mean, if we pull over the weekly, look at it on the weekly itself, right? It's beautiful. Right here. Boom. You know, we tried to get imbalance down, kind of consolidated here overnight after the Trump, you know, news. Condition shift, which we called out in real time. We tried to go with an imbalance right here in this area to see if we just keep going. We didn't. So now what's the expectation? Maybe an imbalance sets up again, or we get the real pullback to get the weekly type extreme fade. And that's what we got. So I don't really care if price, you know, I care and I don't. Okay, so let's be clear here. I care that Delta was obviously in control, no question, by sellers. I care. Okay, anytime I take a trade, this is order flow week, right? So what is the ideal way for order flow to support an entry? Oh, it's to see a weakness on the other side of the tape, right? Not to get into a position just in the face of strength. So that's where this is a good question. Like, how do we handle that? When the narrative is so straightforward, I will take a trade. And you guys saw me take some trades this week where I said order flow not in my favor yet. Remember, order flow is very last on the totem pole, and I wouldn't worry about like price action. Like, just because there's a large move, it does not mean that it's going to continue. I mean, just look at the S&P. It can rip roar, and that's the low of day. It can rip down. You know, it can rip. Just because a market is ripping one way does not mean that it somehow weakens the potential trade for us. In fact, we're probably taking trades who you're more price action based people, you're more trend following people. They say, aha, look, you know, like this trend line broke, right? And so now we're bearish this market, and, you know, we'd have to wait for this to break, or, you know, I don't know what they're looking at, but this is not a normal, like, oh yeah, let's just get long here. We see things that other people don't see. Deviation from VWAP on multiple time frames was really where a lot of our edge came from in that setup. So it's absolutely ideal to get order flow in your favor, but when you have a really clear narrative, this was a fresh condition shift. Right in here is where the condition shifted on the weekly, which was my main type deal for the day. And so to get that as kind of a first retest, it's a really a narrative to take, and I'll wait and see. I'll get involved when there's a momentum shift and see. And guess what it looked like? A lot of freaking buying. So one way to approach it, if you do allow yourself maybe scratching out or things like that on a more kind of advanced level, is, okay, I'm going to get in. Order flow's not in my favor. I'm going to need to see it change. I'm getting in early. I'm going to need to see order flow change. If price keeps going against me and order flow continues to look terrible, I'm out. I'm just going to get out. Greg's asking about the profitability of the new desk traders. We're still, as I mentioned, getting paperwork done. had hoped to get them set up in September. We're just getting them set up here as we kick off October. So ask me in a month. Well, guys, that was the final question of the final Q&A session of the live NADRO course. It's been such a great group. I really mean that. So many people, and I'm not criticizing anyone who hasn't, but like there's been so many of you who've really shared, really been consistent about that. You people helping people. You've just so many of you have done a lot of those things that that we asked of you and we kind of set the tone for. And it's been a really, really good group. 6 weeks has just absolutely flown by here. But this is just the start, This is just like the brain dump and with the like 6 weeks of live analysis to go with it. This is just the beginning. You guys are now equipped with what you need, and it's about developing, right? It's about self-coaching. It's about using your peers and forming those relationships and getting better. And that's what the community's for. So thanks everybody for all the kind words. Let's keep getting after it.